and NADCA are both different and better because of him. Leonard, we celebrate your enthusiasm, your commitment, your sheer hard work. We applaud you because you don't give up, and we thank you for what you have done for us as an industry. Please stand and join me in welcoming the 2015 Herman H. Doehler Award winner, Leonard Cordaro.
Thank you, Andy, for those kind remarks. I didn't realize Andy was going to put my whole life as an open book today, so that's kind of a surprise to me. And many of you that don't know Andy, he's one of the smartest technical guys in the industry today. One of the smartest guys I know, too. I'd like to also thank the awards committee, whoever members are here in this room, for selecting me as the recipient of this year's Doehler Award. I also would like to recognize the former chair of the awards committee, who was a dear friend of mine, as Eric and Andy mentioned previously. Robert Wilson, he had planned on presenting me this award today. And unfortunately, 2 months ago, he succumbed to his cancer after a one-year fight. Bob was a great advocate of this industry, a good long-term friend of many of us for the past 35 years. And he participated in almost every NADCA event since he joined the industry. Bob was a force to be reckoned with. When we were on the board, he would take the opposite view many times, and sometimes he prevailed, sometimes the majority prevailed. But Bob was a huge force in the industry. And he did a lot of things for the industry, and he will be missed by many of us in this room today. So with that in mind, I personally invited Sandy Wilson, Bob's wife, to be here as she was introduced by Andy today. And Sandy, I want to thank you for coming, and we all appreciate that you're here. You took the long drive, and you can share in this event and represent Bob in his spirit today. Thank you. I'd also like to thank 3 people that are sitting at my table, like 3 children. I did not tell them they had to show up. I offered them an invitation. They decided on their own to come and see me get this award. So thank you guys for coming. And we also have the youngest diecaster at the show, Mr. Tegan Noteware, who's 3½, standing over there in his new suit. So when he walks the show, maybe you can grab him and teach him a little bit about die casting. We were showing him the Doehler machine yesterday. So Tegan took a long ride from Colorado out to see his grandfather get this award. The Doehler Award is not an award you get up every day and say, oh, I want to get the Doehler Award. It's such a huge thing in this business. And for the past 43 years, much of my efforts have been on developing a sustainable business at Premier and supporting the industry with my participation in being involved. Die casting is my life. I also try to maintain a balance in my life with my family and my outside friends and activities, but die casting is my life. My involvement in the industry started with the American Die Casting Institute board of directors when I joined the board in the mid-1970s. ADCI was the predecessor of NADCA for corporate members. And at that time, we had the American Die Casting Institute for the corporate companies, members, and we had the Society of Die Casting Engineers for the individual members. At that time, there were many old-timers in the industry, well-known names who had built large and successful die-cast businesses, and the power was concentrated in a few who directed the association. I was fortunate enough to be accepted by many of these old-timers as a young kid out of school, and thus was enlisted on the board at an early age. In the late 1980s, when the Die Casting Institute and the Society of Die Casting Engineers began the merger discussions, I was in the thick of it with a few of the board members today. We had to take two organizations that were financially struggling and put all the power and the egos aside and bring them together as one organization. That organization is NADCA today, which is doing very well and flourishing under the guidance of Dan Twarek. I consider this industry not merely an association of companies and individual members, but I consider it as a community of people. People make things happen. From representing our industry in Washington, D.C., as I have for over 30 years, to performing R&D in the various tech centers we have throughout the country, to employee training. With all the best technology we have today in die casting, you still need good people and a good workforce to help you succeed, especially in a global economy, as you all know. I have many long-term friends in die casting whom I've known for over 35 years. I'm able to call many of these fellow die casters and have a conversation about certain issues or ask to see how a problem is being handled. This exposure and contact is invaluable since die casting is a very difficult process. It's a real difficult process to manage and maintain, especially in today's times of increased demands by the marketplace. Die casting and managing a plant takes a certain type of person to be successful. That person needs to have a strong backbone and a tough skin to thwart all the hurdles that we face as owner-operators. This list is huge, starting with obstacles from our own government, to our customers, to our employees. I find myself saying no quite a bit to a lot of different factions that put demands on the business. I often go to work with the spirit of Robert Duvall as the general in the movie Apocalypse Now, who stated, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning." A lot of us who walk the shop floor every day do love the smell of die lube on a hot die surface. Right? It kind of gets in your blood over the years. I had never planned to become a die caster. And I got into this business somewhat indirectly. Although Andy told you the story, you know it. My first year at the university, I was enrolled in pre-med. My goal was to be a medical doctor, believe it or not. Within 2 months of arriving at school, there was an event that made me change direction and plan to go into the family business. So I switched my major to engineering and accelerated my studies at Notre Dame. Then I went to graduate school for business training, so I would have an education that was beyond engineering and gave me more tools to cope with what I was going to face as far as running the business. I entered the business at 21 and soon learned that people are a barrier to change, especially the ones that are in the same job or the same company for a long time. When I entered the business, I came to my first show and found a different die-cast machine at that show, approximately 40 years ago. So I got back to the plant and explained some of the features of this machine that I had just found. And the old-time engineers, there was 2 of them, they were sitting there saying, they didn't believe what I was explaining to them. And it was a real simple thing like bringing the intensification in with a limit switch instead of resistive pressure. Real simple. On our machines, we had a valve that brought the intensification in. So they didn't believe my story. Well, That machine brand was Prince, who has morphed today into the Doehler name. I had met Mr. Prince at that show, and he personally explained his die-casting machine to me. We developed a good relationship such that I decided to replace all of our older machines with Prince machines. Mr. Prince, for those who knew him in this room, was an unbelievable guy. He was a forward thinker. He was one of the top guys I've met in the industry, and he helped mentor me at an early age. He'd spend some time with me and we'd talk about business. He was a great influence on myself, and he was a huge contributor to the industry. Now, for those of you that don't know Mr. Prince or haven't heard anything about him, he's famous not for die-cast machines, but for developing the lighted vanity mirror in the cars. So when you go in your car and you pull the vanity mirror down and the light comes on, that's Mr. Prince. And when I met him, he was getting that program off there. That put him on the map. He was a great thinker. He came up with another little tidbit. He developed a ham deboning machine that I'm like looking at this thing. He says, I can put any price on this machine. It's a unique machine. And that's the way he was. He was a real forward, outside-the-box thinker. So after my initial experience with trying to bring technology back to my own plant and the older guys rejecting it, I said to myself, I was strongly committed to be the guy who will always try new things and think outside the box through the rest of my career. To this day, I still hold that belief. Over 20 years ago, when the internet was in its infancy, and we were all talking about the internet and the web and all, I came up with the idea to secure the domain diecasting.com, diecastings.com, so I got 2 domains. If I was a little smarter, I would have gotten diecasting.org, and then Dan would have had to get another domain name, but it is what it is. In this business, we tend to focus on the technology of the machines, tools and processes. We've moved a huge distance in our advances since I started with robotic automation, computerized monitoring, servo valves, and PLCs. Back in the 1970s, we did not have the internet. We didn't have iPads, laptops, fax machines, or the cloud as we have today. We didn't have any of this. The big news in technology back then was the Intel 286 processor. So IBM brought this out, or Intel brought it out, and IBM put it in their first PCs, which was the size of a suitcase. We've come a long way in technology, and it's transferred itself into die casting. Being active in that has many benefits. One of those benefits is international travel and visiting foreign die casting plants in different areas of the world. A trip visiting many plants provides a perspective for oneself, so you don't think you're the best guy in the world or you're the only game in town. It gives you a little perspective. One of the trips that impressed me the most was in 1980. We did a tour of the Japanese die-cast industry. At that time, Japan was on the cusp of pushing American manufacturing back with better quality and productivity. The auto companies in America were the big 3, and at that time they had the attitude that they were #1 and they were invincible until Japan started importing cars that were cheaper and more reliable than the cars built in the United States. As die-casters, we had heard about quality circles, 0 defects, PPM, and employee involvement. But those practices were not instituted here as they were practiced in Japan. When we visited the die-cast shops, we were impressed by the state of order, cleanliness, and discipline that were throughout every shop we visited. But the one thing that surprised us was the die-cast machines, the equipment, the technology. It was not better than what we were using in the United States, nor did it have any special features to make better parts. It wasn't the technology, but it was a discipline of the workforce that made the difference. Their workers were dependable, did the same thing every day as instructed, and followed orders from the managers in a very structured way. And they all spoke the same language. Sounds like our workforce today. So the lesson is, it's about training the employees and managing the people on the shop floor to be successful. Yes, the equipment gives you more capability to make thinner parts and less scrap. But if the people are not trained, you do not follow procedures and processes daily, the equipment really doesn't matter that much. The Japanese were sticklers for following the details to make good parts in their factories, and that is what we need today to be more successful. A more trained and knowledgeable workforce, especially with all this technology that we're bringing into our plants. At Premier, we've done a tremendous amount of employee education over the last 5 years using NATCA courses and instructors, and it's helped tremendously, and we're seeing a big difference in that. Although we all know we have a skill shortage in America, we have to change with the times and develop your own skilled people. They're not going to walk in off the street. Looking forwards, the industry needs a few game changers in order to be more competitive and to grow. Things like die steel that'll last 500,000 shots, eliminate the large furnaces that we have holding all this aluminum and go to molten metal on demand. Thinner walls so we can make electronic housings for cell phones today. In 2008, we were in Vienna at the International Foundry Forum, and the head guy at Ericsson Phones got up and he was chastising the foundry industry because we can't make aluminum die castings for 20,000 walls, which if we could, we'd sell billions of them to the cell phone industry. We also need casting machines that will cycle faster and have better controls on them and produce less scrap. The list goes on, but change is necessary for all of us to consider and embrace to be long-term successful. I believe NATCA is a great industry association, and the people who work at NATCA do a great job to make it a world-class respected die-cast association. When I was chairman for 2 years and 3 months, these people worked for me, and I really respect them, and I hope you guys appreciate what they do for the association. Much of the NATCA research that we do today and much of the training are the envy of many foreign companies and associations. NATCA has evolved with their training from classrooms at headquarters to online training so our people do not need to leave the plant for their training anymore. So NATCA is forming new changes and new techniques to deal with our industry and give us better services. I'd like to thank the NATCA board and employees of NATCA for doing a great job over the years with change and evolving. Keep it up, guys. Thank you all for coming. God bless die casting.